Everyone feared the mafia boss who never showed emotion, but nobody expected the coldest man in the city to quietly prepare a warm meal for the woman everyone overlooked. Ethan Walker had spent years building a life where control was everything. His name carried influence, his decisions carried weight, and the people around him learned quickly not to question his silence. Inside his grand estate outside the city, every room reflected the same image of the man he had become. Perfectly arranged, completely controlled, completely empty. The 42-year-old white mafia boss was known as a man who rarely allowed anyone close. Employees respected him. Business partners listened to him. Strangers feared his reputation. But behind the carefully maintained image was a man who had forgotten what it felt like to care for someone without expecting anything in return. That night, after returning home earlier than usual, Ethan expected the same quiet atmosphere that had followed him for years. The large mansion was covered in soft golden light, but the silence inside felt heavier than the darkness outside. As he walked through the hallway, he noticed something unusual. The door to his private bedroom was slightly open. Ethan stopped. That room was the one place in the house where he found peace. Few people were allowed near it. When he stepped inside, he saw Maya Brooks sitting quietly on the edge of the bed. She was not there because she wanted comfort or attention. She was there because she had become too exhausted to continue working. The Black Maid who spent every day caring for everyone else had finally reached a moment when she needed someone to care for her. Maya looked surprised when Ethan entered. She immediately tried to apologize and explain, expecting disappointment. She knew the rules of the house. She knew the distance between someone like her and someone like Ethan. But instead of anger, Ethan noticed something he had ignored for a long time. He noticed that she looked tired. He noticed that the person who always made sure everyone else was comfortable had never asked anyone to notice her. For a moment, the powerful mafia boss stood silently, unsure what to say. His entire life had trained him to solve problems with authority. But this was different. This was not a business matter. This was a person. Maya quietly said that she would leave and return to her duties, but Ethan stopped her. He told her to rest. The words were simple, yet they surprised both of them. Later that evening, the kitchen lights turned on for the first time in a way nobody expected. The man who usually left every responsibility to others stood alone preparing a simple meal. Ethan did not do it because he wanted recognition. He did not do it because someone was watching. He did it because, for the first time in years, he felt the need to help someone who had always helped others. When Maya received the food, she looked at him with quiet surprise. She had seen many sides of Ethan Walker. She had seen the powerful businessman, the serious leader, and the distant man everyone respected from afar. But she had never seen this side of him, the side that showed concern without needing words. Ethan quickly looked away, almost uncomfortable with his own kindness. He was a man who knew how to command a room, but he did not know how to accept the simple warmth of a human connection. And Maya, the woman who had always been invisible in the eyes of others, was about to become the person who reminded him that even the strongest walls can open when someone chooses compassion over pride. That night, neither of them realized it yet, but one small act of kindness would begin changing everything inside the mansion they both called home. The morning after that unexpected night inside the Hayes estate felt different, even though everything around Ethan Walker looked exactly the same. The marble floors were polished, the large windows filled the rooms with soft sunlight, and the staff continued their usual routines. But something had changed. For the first time in years, Ethan noticed the small details around him. He noticed the quiet footsteps of the people working in the house. He noticed the effort behind every carefully prepared room. And he noticed Maya Brooks, the Black Maid who had spent so much time caring for everyone else while rarely receiving the same attention. Ethan had always believed that people revealed themselves through their actions, and Maya had shown him something he never expected. She never complained. She never asked for special treatment. She simply continued doing her responsibilities with patience and dignity. Before that night, Ethan had seen her as a reliable employee. After that night, he began seeing her as a person. Maya returned to her normal duties as if nothing unusual had happened. She did not mention the meal he prepared. She did not tell anyone about the kindness she had received from the man everyone considered impossible to reach. That surprised Ethan more than anything. Many people around him searched for opportunities to gain his attention, but Maya seemed completely uninterested in his status or influence. She treated his gesture as something natural, not something extraordinary. Later that morning, Ethan passed through the dining room and saw Maya arranging flowers on the table. She noticed him and politely greeted him. Ethan paused for a moment, unsure why such a simple interaction felt different. He was used to people becoming nervous around him. He was used to conversations becoming formal whenever he entered a room. But Maya spoke to him with the same calm respect she showed everyone else. "How are you feeling today?" Ethan asked. The question surprised Maya because it was the first time he had asked about her personally. She smiled and answered that she was feeling better. Then she thanked him again for helping her the previous evening. Ethan simply nodded, but the moment stayed in his mind. He realized that he had not thought about someone else's comfort in a long time. His life had been filled with responsibilities, decisions, and expectations. He had become someone who protected everything around him, but rarely allowed himself to experience genuine connection. Meanwhile, the other employees in the mansion began noticing the subtle change. They saw that Ethan no longer walked through the halls like a distant shadow. They saw him stop and acknowledge the people around him. The difference was small, but it was there. Nobody understood why it happened. Nobody knew. That one quiet evening with Maya had reminded him of something he had forgotten. Kindness did not make someone weaker. It revealed their humanity. That afternoon, Ethan found Maya organizing supplies in a small room near the kitchen. He asked why she always worked so carefully, even when nobody was watching. Maya looked surprised by the question. She explained that every person deserved respect, regardless of their position. She believed that small actions mattered because people remembered how others made them feel. Ethan listened carefully. Her answer stayed with him because it challenged the way he had viewed the world. He had spent years surrounded by people who valued power and influence. Maya valued something completely different. She valued compassion. As evening arrived, Ethan stood near the window of his office and looked over the estate grounds. For the first time, he wondered how many people around him had been quietly carrying their own struggles without anyone noticing. He thought about Maya, the woman who always gave her best while expecting nothing in return. The realization was uncomfortable because it forced him to see something about himself. He had built a life where everyone knew his name, but very few people truly knew him. And the person who understood him the most was someone he had barely noticed before. Ethan did not know where this change would lead. He did not know why a simple act of caring had affected him so deeply, but he knew one thing. The woman who had entered his home as a maid had started changing the way he saw the world. And for a man who had spent his entire life believing he could control everything, that was a discovery he could not ignore. The days that followed the night Ethan Walker cooked for Maya Brooks were filled with moments that seemed ordinary to everyone else. But to Ethan, they carried a meaning he could not ignore. The Mafia Boss had spent years believing that emotions created distractions. He built his reputation on being calm, focused, and impossible to read. People around him knew the powerful man who made decisions without hesitation, but almost nobody knew the person behind that image. Maya was different. She did not try to understand Ethan because of his position. She understood him because she paid attention to the small things others ignored. She noticed when he looked tired after long days. She noticed when he skipped meals because he was too focused on his responsibilities. She noticed the silence that followed him through every room of the mansion. But she never judged him. She simply showed kindness in the quietest ways. One afternoon, Ethan returned to the estate earlier than expected and found Maya arranging books in the small library. She looked surprised to see him because he rarely came home during the day. Ethan noticed that she immediately stepped aside, giving him space as she always did. But this time, he stopped and asked her a question. "Do you ever take time for yourself?" Maya looked at him with a gentle expression, surprised by his concern. She smiled and explained that she was used to caring for others. It was simply who she was. Ethan listened carefully. Her answer reminded him of something important. Some people gave kindness so naturally that they forgot they deserved it too. Maya had spent so much time making sure others felt comfortable that nobody had asked whether she was comfortable herself. That evening, Ethan made another unexpected decision. Instead of staying in his office as he usually did, he joined the staff during dinner. The room became unusually quiet because everyone noticed the difference. Ethan was still the same serious man, but there was a new sense of awareness in the way he interacted with people. He thanked the staff for their work. He asked simple questions. He listened to their answers. Maya watched from a distance and noticed the change, but she never mentioned it. She understood that real growth did not need to be announced. It showed through actions. Later that night, Ethan found himself thinking about his past. He remembered how he had always measured people by loyalty, efficiency, and usefulness. In his world, trust was difficult to give. Everyone seemed to want something from him. But Maya had never asked for anything. She had never tried to impress him or use his attention for personal gain. She had simply treated him with respect from the beginning. That realization stayed with him. The following morning, Ethan noticed Maya helping a younger employee who was struggling with a task. She patiently explained what needed to be done and encouraged the person instead of criticizing them. Ethan watched silently and understood why people naturally trusted her. Maya did not lead through authority. She led through compassion. For someone like Ethan, who had spent his life surrounded by power, that was a rare quality. Later, he asked Maya why she always treated everyone with the same kindness. She answered that a person's position did not determine their worth. Everyone wanted to feel respected. Everyone wanted to know that their efforts mattered. Ethan remained quiet after hearing those words. They were simple, but they carried a truth he had forgotten. He had spent years protecting his reputation, but he had rarely considered the emotional world of the people around him. As the sun set over the mansion, Ethan stood near the garden where Maya often spent her breaks. He realized that the woman he once saw as just an employee had become someone who challenged the way he viewed life. She had not changed him through demands or expectations. She changed him by showing him a different way to exist, a way built on patience, understanding, and genuine care. And for the first time in many years, Ethan Walker wondered if the walls he had built around himself were protecting him or simply keeping everyone away. The quiet transformation inside the Hayes estate continued, but Ethan Walker knew that every change in his world came with questions. For years, people around him had accepted the image he created. The powerful mafia boss who never showed uncertainty. The man who made decisions with confidence and kept his emotions hidden behind a calm expression. Nobody expected that the smallest act of kindness toward one person would begin changing the way he viewed everyone around him. But Maya Brooks had never tried to change him. She had never asked him to become someone different. She simply treated him with the same respect and compassion she gave to everyone else. That was what made her impossible for Ethan to ignore. One morning, Ethan walked through the mansion and noticed something unusual. The atmosphere felt warmer. The staff members seemed more comfortable speaking with each other. The rooms that once felt silent now carried quiet conversations and small moments of connection. Ethan knew the building itself had not changed. The people inside it had. And he understood that Maya was the reason behind that shift. Later that day, Ethan found Maya in the kitchen preparing meals for the household. He noticed how carefully she organized everything and how she made sure every person received what they needed. It was a routine she had followed for years, but nobody had truly noticed it before. Ethan stood nearby and asked why she always put so much effort into things that others might overlook. Maya looked thoughtful before answering. She said that people often remembered how others made them feel more than they remembered the things they received. Her words stayed with Ethan. He had spent his life making sure people respected him, but he had rarely considered whether people felt valued around him. That evening, Ethan made another decision that surprised everyone in the mansion. He joined Maya and the staff for a simple dinner instead of eating alone in his private office. The room became quiet at first because nobody expected the man who owned the estate to sit among them. But Ethan did not act like he was above anyone. He listened to their stories and thanked them for their dedication. Maya watched the moment silently. She saw something changing in him. Not because he wanted to appear kinder, but because he was beginning to understand the importance of connection. However, not everyone viewed Maya the same way. Some people outside the mansion questioned why Ethan had become so considerate toward a maid. They believed someone in Maya's position should remain unnoticed. They judged her by her work instead of her character. When Ethan heard those comments, he remembered how he once thought the same way. He had looked at Maya and seen only her role. He had not seen the person behind it. That realization bothered him because he understood how unfair that judgment had been. A few days later, Ethan saw Maya helping someone who was having a difficult day. She offered encouragement without expecting anything in return. She did not care whether anyone noticed. She simply believed that people deserved kindness. Ethan realized that this was the reason Maya was different. Her strength did not come from influence or authority. It came from the way she treated people when nobody was watching. That night, Ethan stood alone in his office and looked across the mansion. The same place that once represented distance and isolation now felt different. He thought about Maya and the unexpected impact she had made on his life. She had entered his world as someone most people overlooked, but she had shown him something he had forgotten. A person's value was never determined by their position. It was revealed through their actions. For the first time in years, Ethan Walker was not thinking about protecting his reputation or maintaining his image. He was thinking about protecting something much more important, the trust of someone who had never asked for anything from him. And that realization changed the way he looked at Maya forever. The changes inside the Hayes estate became impossible for people to ignore. The mansion that had once felt distant and silent now carried a different energy. Conversations happened more often. People smiled more easily. Even the staff members who had spent years keeping their distance from Ethan Walker began noticing that something about him had changed. The Mafia Boss was still respected, still powerful, and still known for his serious nature, but there was a new warmth beneath the surface. The reason was someone nobody expected: Maya Brooks. For Ethan, the change was confusing because Maya had never tried to influence him. She had never demanded his attention or asked for special treatment. She simply continued living by the same principles she always followed. Treat people with respect. Help when someone needs support. Stay kind even when nobody notices. Those simple values had become more powerful than Ethan ever imagined. But outside the quiet walls of the mansion, not everyone understood what was happening. Some people connected to Ethan's world began questioning the growing trust between him and Maya. They believed someone in her position should remain invisible. They believed influence and importance were determined by wealth, background, and status. Ethan heard those opinions, but instead of accepting them like he once would have, he found himself questioning them. He thought about the night he found Maya exhausted and alone. He thought about how she had spent years caring for everyone else without asking anyone to care for her. He thought about how easily people overlooked her because they never took the time to truly see her. One afternoon, Ethan noticed Maya quietly helping prepare for an important gathering at the estate. She moved through the rooms with patience, making sure every detail was handled. Nobody asked her to do more than her responsibilities required, yet she always gave extra effort. Ethan watched from a distance and realized something. Maya was not kind because she wanted approval. She was kind because it was part of who she was. Later that day, Ethan approached her and asked a question that surprised her. Do you ever get tired of always being the person who helps everyone else? Maya paused for a moment. She admitted that sometimes it was difficult, but she believed small acts of care could make a difference in someone's day. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. He understood that she carried responsibilities quietly, just as he carried his own burdens quietly. The difference was that Maya never allowed those burdens to make her cold. That realization affected him deeply. Ethan had spent years believing that becoming distant was necessary to survive his world. Maya showed him that strength did not require losing compassion. A few days later, Ethan made a decision that surprised everyone. He asked Maya for her opinion about a matter involving the household. It was not because he needed help with the decision. It was because he valued her perspective. Maya was surprised because she had never expected her thoughts to matter to someone like him. But Ethan had learned that wisdom did not always come from people with the highest titles. Sometimes it came from the person who quietly observed everything while others were too distracted by appearances. As time passed, the people around Ethan began seeing Maya differently. They noticed her patience. They noticed her honesty. They noticed the way the entire atmosphere of the mansion improved because of her presence. The same person they once overlooked had become someone they respected. One evening, Ethan stood outside the mansion and watched the lights shine through the windows. He thought about how different everything felt compared to before. He still had responsibilities. He still carried the weight of his position. But he no longer felt completely alone. Maya had reminded him that even someone surrounded by power could still need kindness. And perhaps the greatest surprise was not that Maya changed Ethan. It was that she showed him the person he had always been underneath everything he built around himself. A person who could care. A person who could trust. A person who could finally allow someone else to stand beside him. The relationship between Ethan Walker and Maya Brooks continued changing in ways neither of them expected. What started as a simple moment of compassion had slowly become something that affected the entire atmosphere of the Hayes estate. The mafia boss who once believed emotions were distractions had begun noticing the value of small connections. But the more Ethan changed, the more he realized that understanding someone was only the beginning. True respect required seeing their struggles as well. Maya had always been the person who cared for others quietly. She arrived early, completed her responsibilities, and made sure everyone around her felt comfortable. But Ethan began noticing the moments when she became tired, the moments when she carried too much without saying anything. For years, nobody had stopped to ask if Maya was doing well. Ethan was beginning to understand that she had spent so much time supporting others that she had forgotten what it felt like to receive support herself. One afternoon, Ethan returned to the mansion and found Maya sitting alone in the garden during her break. She was looking through a small notebook filled with handwritten reminders and personal thoughts. When she noticed him approaching, she immediately stood up, assuming she needed to return to work. Ethan gently told her there was no need. He asked if he could sit with her for a moment. The request surprised Maya because Ethan had rarely asked anyone for simple companionship. They sat quietly in the garden, surrounded by soft sunlight and the sound of leaves moving in the wind. For once, Ethan was not discussing business, responsibilities, or decisions. He was simply present. He asked Maya about her life before working at the estate. She was surprised because nobody had asked her that question in a long time. Maya shared that she had always believed kindness was something people could choose, even during difficult moments. She explained that everyone carried invisible struggles, and sometimes the smallest gesture could remind someone they were not alone. Ethan listened carefully. Her words touched something inside him because he realized she had understood a truth he had forgotten. He had spent years building walls to protect himself, but those same walls had prevented him from experiencing genuine connection. As their conversation continued, Ethan noticed something important. Maya never spoke about herself as someone who deserved sympathy. She spoke about life with acceptance and quiet strength. She did not see herself as someone waiting to be saved. She saw herself as someone who could still bring kindness into the world. That perspective changed the way Ethan viewed her. He no longer saw Maya as someone who worked for him. He saw her as someone whose character inspired him. Meanwhile, people around the estate began noticing the change in Ethan more clearly. The once distant man started showing appreciation for the people who supported his household. He began asking questions instead of giving orders. He began listening instead of assuming he already knew the answer. The difference was not dramatic, but it was meaningful. Maya had not transformed him through pressure. She had influenced him through example. However, Ethan also realized something else. The more important Maya became to him, the more difficult it would be for others to understand. Many people were comfortable with the old version of Ethan. They understood a man who was powerful, silent, and unreachable. They did not know what to do with a man who showed compassion. One evening, Ethan found himself standing in the same kitchen where he had prepared a meal for Maya weeks earlier. He remembered how unusual that moment had felt. At the time, he thought he was simply helping someone who needed care. Now he understood that moment had also helped him. Maya had reminded him of a part of himself that he had buried beneath years of responsibility. A part that still wanted to care. A part that still wanted to connect. As the night settled over the Hayes estate, Ethan looked through the windows toward the garden where Maya often spent quiet moments. He knew his life would never be the same again. The world might continue judging people by titles and appearances, but he had learned something more valuable. The person with the least visible power could sometimes possess the greatest strength. And the woman everyone overlooked had become the one person who helped him find his way back to being human. The change in Ethan Walker was no longer something people could ignore. The man who once moved through the Hayes estate like a distant figure had slowly become someone who noticed the people around him. He still carried the presence of a powerful mafia boss, but the coldness that once surrounded him had started to disappear. The reason was simple. Maya Brooks had shown him that strength was not measured by how much distance someone could create. It was measured by how much kindness someone could give without expecting anything in return. But as Ethan began embracing this new perspective, he discovered that not everyone was ready to accept it. Some people connected to his world believed a man like him should remain unchanged. They respected the version of Ethan who was serious, unreachable, and focused only on power. They did not understand the man who now took time to listen, appreciate, and care. One afternoon, Ethan attended an important gathering at the estate. Several guests arrived expecting to see the same intimidating figure they had always known. They expected the silent leader who never showed emotion. Instead, they noticed small differences. Ethan greeted the staff members personally. He thanked people for their efforts. He showed patience during conversations. These details seemed insignificant, but to those who knew him for years, they represented a major transformation. During the event, some guests questioned Maya's presence. They could not understand why someone in her position was treated with such respect by Ethan. Their comments were not loud, but the judgment behind them was clear. Maya heard them, but she remained calm. She had faced similar assumptions throughout her life. She knew that some people decided a person's value before learning their story. Ethan noticed the situation. In the past, he might have ignored it because he believed other people's opinions did not matter. But this time was different. He understood that remaining silent could allow unfair judgments to continue. He looked at Maya and realized something important. She had never asked him to defend her. She had never expected special treatment. She had always trusted that her actions would speak louder than other people's opinions. That was exactly why he respected her. Ethan calmly explained that Maya's importance was not based on her position inside the house. It was based on her character, her dedication, and the way she treated everyone around her. The room became quiet because nobody expected the Mafia boss to speak so openly about something personal. Ethan had built his reputation on being unreadable. Yet in that moment, he showed more honesty than anyone had ever seen from him. Maya looked at him with surprise because she never expected him to say those words publicly. She had always believed respect should be earned naturally, not demanded. Ethan agreed, but he also believed that people deserved to be recognized when they had been unfairly judged. Later that evening, Maya thanked Ethan for what he had done. She told him that he did not need to change the way he treated people just because others were watching. Ethan smiled slightly and explained that he was not trying to impress anyone. He was simply tired of ignoring what he had finally learned. People mattered. Their feelings mattered. Their efforts mattered. Those words revealed how much he had changed. The man who once believed emotions were weaknesses had discovered that compassion required more strength than distance. As days passed, the people around the estate began seeing Maya differently. They saw that she was not important because Ethan protected her. She was important because she had always been valuable. Ethan had simply been one of the few people willing to truly see it. One evening, Ethan stood in the garden with Maya as the sunset covered the estate in warm light. He told her that before she entered his life, he thought protecting himself meant keeping everyone away. She quietly replied that sometimes people build walls because they are afraid of being hurt, but those same walls can also keep happiness outside. Ethan looked across the garden and understood the truth behind her words. For years, he had protected his heart by closing it. Maya had not broken those walls. She had simply shown him that he was allowed to open the door. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan Walker felt that he was no longer living just to survive. He was finally learning how to live. The days after Ethan Walker openly showed his respect for Maya Brooks marked a new chapter inside the Hayes estate. The mansion that had once represented distance and isolation slowly became a place where people felt seen. Ethan noticed the difference every morning. The staff no longer avoided conversations when he entered a room. The atmosphere was no longer built around fear or silence. Instead, there was a sense of trust that had been missing for years. Ethan understood that this change did not happen because of his position or influence. It happened because one person had shown him the importance of treating others with genuine care. Maya continued living the same way she always had. She never acted differently because Ethan respected her. She never expected special attention or used her connection with him to gain anything. She remained humble, patient, and focused on helping others. That was exactly what made Ethan admire her even more. He realized that Maya's kindness was not something she displayed when people were watching. It was part of who she was when nobody noticed. One morning, Ethan walked through the estate and saw Maya speaking with a new employee who seemed nervous about making mistakes. Instead of criticizing or making the person feel uncomfortable, Maya offered encouragement and explained that everyone needed time to learn. Ethan watched quietly from a distance. He remembered a time when he would have only cared about results. He would have judged someone based on efficiency and performance. But Maya had taught him to look deeper. She had taught him that behind every action was a person with their own feelings and challenges. Later that day, Ethan invited Maya to join him for a conversation in the library. He wanted to ask her something he had been thinking about for a while. He asked why she continued being kind even after experiencing moments when others treated her unfairly because of her position. Maya looked at the shelves filled with books before answering. She explained that other people's opinions did not define her. She could not control how everyone viewed her, but she could control how she chose to treat others. Ethan remained silent because her words reflected a strength he rarely saw. She had faced judgment without allowing it to change her heart. That was a kind of courage he respected deeply. As the weeks passed, Ethan began making choices based on values he had learned from Maya. He became more aware of the people around him. He started recognizing the effort behind everyday tasks. He understood that leadership was not only about making decisions. It was also about understanding the people affected by those decisions. The change became especially clear during another gathering at the estate. Some guests who once underestimated Maya now approached her with genuine respect. They had seen the difference she made. They understood that her value had never depended on her role. It came from her character. Ethan noticed this shift, but did not take credit for it. He knew Maya had earned that respect through years of consistency and compassion. That evening, Ethan and Maya walked through the garden together. The sunset created a warm glow across the estate, making the place feel completely different from the cold mansion he remembered. Ethan admitted that before meeting her, he believed being strong meant never needing anyone. Maya listened quietly as he explained that he now understood strength could also mean allowing others to bring kindness into his life. She smiled and told him that people were not meant to carry everything alone. For a moment, Ethan simply stood there, appreciating the peace of the evening. The man who once believed his world had no room for softness had discovered something unexpected. Compassion did not weaken him. It gave his life meaning. Maya had never tried to change Ethan Walker. She had simply shown him another way to see the world. And the greatest surprise was that the person everyone once overlooked had become the person who helped the most powerful man in the room finally understand the value of being human. Months had passed since the night Ethan Walker discovered that kindness could exist even in the quietest moments, and the Hayes estate was no longer the same place it had once been. The mansion that had always felt distant and cold now carried a different feeling. The rooms were still elegant, the halls were still wide, and Ethan was still a powerful mafia boss known throughout the city, but something inside the walls had changed. People felt respected. People felt valued. And everyone knew the reason behind that transformation. Maya Brooks, the Black Maid who had once been overlooked, had become the person who reminded everyone that a person's worth was never defined by their position. Ethan often thought about how different his life had become. Before Maya entered his world, he believed control was the only way to protect himself. He believed that keeping emotions hidden was the only way to remain strong. But Maya showed him that strength was not about standing alone. It was about having the courage to care. One peaceful morning, Ethan walked through the garden where he and Maya had shared many quiet conversations. The sunlight covered the flowers and trees with a warm glow, creating a scene that felt completely different from the lonely place he remembered. He found Maya there, taking a short break while enjoying the calm atmosphere. Ethan smiled slightly as he approached. It was a small expression, but for someone who had rarely shown emotion, it meant everything. Maya noticed the change immediately. She had watched him become a different person, not because he lost his authority, but because he finally understood what truly mattered. Ethan thanked her for something she never expected to hear. He thanked her for showing him that every person deserved respect, regardless of their background or role. Maya quietly replied that she had never done anything special. She had simply treated people the way she wanted to be treated. But Ethan knew that was exactly what made her extraordinary. Many people talked about kindness. Maya lived it every day. Later that afternoon, Ethan entered the main hall of the estate and saw the staff working together. Years earlier, he would have walked past without noticing. Now, he stopped and acknowledged their efforts. He understood that every person who helped maintain his home contributed to the life he enjoyed. This simple realization represented the biggest change in him. He was no longer only focused on what people could do for him. He cared about who they were. The people around him saw the difference too. The man they once viewed as unreachable had become someone who listened, someone who appreciated, someone who understood that respect was not created by status, but by the way a person treated others. Maya never asked Ethan to change. She never demanded recognition or expected a reward. She simply remained the same person she had always been. That was why her influence was so powerful. She did not change his world through pressure. She changed it through example. One evening, Ethan stood beside the large windows of his office and looked across the estate. The view was the same as it had been for years, but his perspective was completely different. He remembered the man he used to be, a man surrounded by people but separated from them, a man with power but very little peace. Now he understood that a meaningful life was not built only through achievements or influence. It was built through connection, through trust, through moments when people chose compassion instead of judgment. Maya had entered the Hayes estate as someone many people ignored. She left an impact that nobody could ignore. She reminded Ethan that even someone who appeared to have everything could still be missing something important. And she showed him that the greatest changes often begin with the smallest acts of kindness. Ethan Walker remained a powerful man, but he was no longer only defined by power. He was defined by the respect he gave, the kindness he learned, and the humanity he finally allowed himself to embrace. And that day, the world remembered that true strength is not found in how much power someone holds, but in how much kindness they are willing to share.